When Melissa first arrived at my doorstep, drenched in tears and clinging to a suitcase that looked like it had been packed in panic, I didn't hesitate. She had just finalized her divorce from Jordan, and her voice trembled on the phone when she asked if she could stay for a little while. She was my older sister, the woman who used to braid my hair in high school and sneak me out for ice cream when our parents were fighting. I didn't even ask how long she'd need. I just said yes. The first night, she barely spoke. She curled up on the couch with a blanket pulled up to her chin and stared at the television like she wasn't really watching it. I made her tea, but it went cold beside her. I asked her if she wanted to talk, but she shook her head. All she said before falling asleep was, "Thank you, Addie. I don't know what I'd do without you." At first, it was fine. She was quiet, respectful, and visibly broken. She cried in the shower, thinking I couldn't hear her. She kept her things neat in the guest room and always asked before she used anything in the kitchen. I felt proud, even a little heroic, like I was finally repaying all the times she protected me when we were kids. I kept reminding myself that this was temporary, that she just needed time, but after the first 2 months, something shifted. The house started to feel less like mine and more like ours. I didn't notice it right away. It was subtle. A picture of her and her kids, my nieces, on the mantle next to mine. Her shoes at the front door where I usually kept it clear. Groceries I didn't buy showing up in the fridge. She started answering the door when someone rang the bell. She began referring to the house as home. "I'm heading home," she'd say to her friends on the phone. "Just got back to the house," she'd text her ex when arranging visits with the girls. She stopped asking to borrow things and started rearranging drawers in the kitchen. One afternoon, I opened a cabinet to grab a mug and found all my cups had been moved to a new shelf. When I asked her about it, she said, "Oh, I just thought this made more sense. It's easier to reach." I laughed, unsure of whether to be annoyed or grateful that she cared enough to rearrange anything at all. But deep inside, I felt something, small and sharp twist in my chest. Then came the guests. Her friends started stopping by more often, always greeted like family, always invited to sit and stay. One of them brought wine and they drank it on my porch like it was theirs. I didn't recognize the cushions she'd set out on the chairs. When I asked where they came from, she said she picked them up for the house. The house. I still told myself this was normal, that people heal in strange ways, that she was nesting. But it got harder when she started inviting her daughters over every weekend. At first, I loved it. I adore those girls, but it became a routine that didn't include me. They sprawled out in the living room, their toys spread like roots, their laughter echoing through the hallway. They had their own snacks, their own corner of the pantry, their own bath toys lined up by the tub. Melissa started referring to the guest room as the girls' room. She painted the walls a pale yellow. She bought a dresser. She installed a tiny bookshelf with fairy lights above it. And when I tried to say something, when I brought it up casually over tea, she looked hurt. "I thought you'd be happy," she said, voice soft and wounded. "You love them." "I do," I replied gently. "But this is still my house." There was a pause. Her eyes darkened just a little. She gave a tight smile. "Of course it is." But something in her tone didn't feel right. It lingered. The next week, I got home from work, and the lock on the front door had been changed. Melissa met me at the door with a sheepish smile and a set of keys in her hand. "The old one was sticking," she said. "I didn't want you getting locked out again." I stared at her, feeling like I was standing in the wrong version of my life. "You changed the lock?" She nodded casually. "Yeah, but don't worry. I made you a copy. Made me a copy of my own house key." My voice trembled when I spoke again. "Melissa, you should have told me. This isn't your place." She tilted her head. "Isn't it ours now?" And there it was, spoken plainly for the first time. The quiet suggestion I had ignored was now fully formed, dressed in her soft, calm voice like it belonged there, like I was the one overreacting. Like her presence, her things, her her daughters, and her decisions were all justified. I didn't know what to say. I took the key from her hand and went to my room, the door clicking behind me like a question I didn't know how to answer. It only got worse from there. The next morning, the smell of pancakes drifted through the hallway before my alarm even went off. I walked into the kitchen to find Melissa flipping them in my skillet, the girls already seated at the table, syrup sticky on their fingers. There was music playing softly on the speaker, something upbeat and cheerful, like a sitcom scene brought to life. But my stomach twisted. "Morning," she chirped, as if nothing had happened the day before. "I made your favorite." I blinked at her. "You were up early," she shrugged. "Had energy. Figured I'd treat my family." The word hit me sideways. Family, sure. But this felt like a takeover masked in kindness, like a silk ribbon tied around a knife. I sat down, trying to pretend everything was fine. But my throat was tight and the coffee she poured me tasted like bitterness. That week, I found out she'd started giving out my address on official forms, school paperwork, legal mail, even for a subscription box she signed up for. I found an envelope addressed to the Harrison household, with both our names listed on the label. I confronted her, asking why she hadn't told me she was using my address for everything. She waved it off with a smile. "It's just easier. This way, Addie. I can't keep switching addresses, and this feels more permanent." Permanent. I stood there in the kitchen, clutching the letter like it was a live wire. "It's not permanent. You're staying here temporarily, remember?" She looked confused for a moment, then tired. "I thought we were past that conversation. Addie, I've put so much into this place. I fixed the plumbing in the guest bathroom, I reorganized the pantry, I even cleaned out the garage." I laughed, but it came out wrong, dry and sharp. "None of those things gave you ownership. It's my house, Mel. You don't live here. You're staying here." She didn't respond right away, just looked at me with that same disappointed expression she used to give me when I flunked math or came home too late as a teen. And that's when it hit me. She believed she was saving me. She really thought she was improving my life by embedding herself into it. That night, I noticed something missing from the hallway wall, a framed photo of our parents' wedding, one of the only things I'd taken from the old house after they died. I found it leaning against the inside of the hall closet, face down. I asked her about it, and she said it didn't match the new vibe of the place. The new vibe. My house, my memories, reduced to an aesthetic decision she made without me. Started locking my bedroom door at night. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. There were whispers between Melissa and the girls that stopped when I entered the room. I found group texts between her and her friends about finally settling down again, jokes about interior design choices, conversations about how she'd always wanted a house like this one. Never a mention of me, never a hint that she was, in fact, a guest. I started to notice how she would answer questions about the house. The neighbor asked who'd installed the new blinds, and she said, "Oh, I did, they just weren't working for us." A friend of hers visited and asked, "Is this all yours?" And Melissa smiled and said, "We've made it home." We. The words began to haunt me. I looked into a lawyer, just to be safe. I didn't want to believe I needed one, but something deep in my gut kept scratching. I learned that if someone stayed long enough, used the address, paid bills, even if indirectly, they could build a claim. It didn't matter whose name was on the deed if someone argued they had established residency. My chest went cold. That week, I asked her to start looking for a new place. I chose my words carefully, trying to avoid conflict. I said things like, "I think it's time," and "You've had time to heal," and "You'll feel better with your own space." She didn't answer for a long time, just stared at me. From across the dinner table, the girls already tucked into bed, the dishes between us cold. Finally, she spoke. "I can't believe you'd do this to me." "Do what, Melissa? Ask you to leave my house?" She looked hurt again, that wounded expression she wore like armor. "I'm your sister. I needed you. And now that I'm finally rebuilding, you're throwing me out?" "I'm not throwing you out. I'm reminding you this was never meant to be permanent." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her glass of wine. "You're not the same, Addie. You used to care about people, about family. My voice shook when I answered. I still do. That's why I let you in. But this isn't love anymore. This feels like theft. She stood up slowly, leaving her half-eaten plate behind, her back tall and straight like she was the one in control. She didn't yell, she didn't argue. But as she walked away, I felt a silence settle in the house that was deeper than any fight we'd ever had. It felt like war, and I was already losing ground. The days that followed were quiet, but not peaceful. Melissa didn't bring up our conversation again, but her silence was loud, and her presence loomed even heavier in the house. She didn't make breakfast anymore, didn't chat in the hallway or offer to fold the laundry. Instead, she moved around like a ghost with a mission, always a step ahead of me, always avoiding eye contact but never missing a beat in her takeover. I came home one afternoon to find a for sale sign removed from a neighbor's lawn and stacked against the side of my garage. When I asked her about it, she said she was thinking of maybe buying something nearby, but the words rang hollow. She hadn't looked at a single listing. She hadn't even downloaded a real estate app. One evening, I overheard her on the phone in her room. I hadn't meant to listen, but her door was open and the words stopped me cold. Yes, I've been here long enough. It's more mine than hers at this point. She doesn't even use half the house. And legally, I have a good shot. My stomach dropped. I wanted to burst in, scream, demand answers. But I didn't. I went back to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. That night, I started gathering every piece of paper I could find. My mortgage documents, utility bills, property tax receipts. I organized it all in a binder and labeled it with my name in thick black marker. I took photos of every room in the house as it was now, just in case I needed to prove how things had changed since she arrived. I backed up all my texts with her, the emails where she thanked me for letting her stay. I felt ridiculous. Like I was prepping for battle with someone I used to share a bedroom with as a child. The next morning, I noticed a file on the kitchen counter. It was open, as if left there for me to find. Inside were documents, printouts from online forums about squatters' rights, a draft of a letter she'd written to a local housing support agency, even a budget plan with my address typed at the top. My blood turned to ice. I confronted her, voice trembling with anger. "What is this, Melissa?" She didn't flinch. She looked up from her coffee and met my eyes with a flat, unreadable expression. "It's just research." "For what? Claiming my house as your own?" She exhaled slowly, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "You don't understand what it's like to lose everything, Addie. You've never had your life torn apart. You've never had to start over?" I felt my hands clench into fists. "So you're starting over with my life?" "It's not like that," she said quickly, too quickly. I need stability. And the girls need it too. We've been through hell, and I helped you through it," I snapped. "But you're twisting that help into a foothold. This is manipulation." Her voice dropped low. "You're making a mistake." I stared at her, a bitter laugh choking in my throat. "No, Melissa, you are." I contacted the lawyer again the next day. She advised I give Melissa a formal written notice to vacate, delivered with proof and a clear deadline. I printed it out and placed it in an envelope, sealed and heavy with finality. When I handed it to her, she looked at it like it was poison. "Didn't think you'd actually do this," she whispered. "I didn't think you'd force me to." She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she left the envelope on the counter and walked out to the backyard, staring out at the small garden we used to work on together, the same place where she once laughed while planting basil, the girls playing in the grass nearby. I watched her from the window, heart breaking even as it hardened. I didn't want things to be this way, but I wasn't going to surrender my home. After that, the tension in the house sharpened. She began packing slowly, deliberately, as if she hoped I would change my mind. Boxes appeared in the hallway. The girls cried when she told them they'd be moving again, and I heard her whisper to them, "Aunt Addie just needs space. She doesn't want us here anymore." That night, one of them knocked on my door. Lily, the younger one, just 6, stood in her pajamas with tears on her cheeks. "Why are you making us leave?" she asked in a tiny voice. I knelt down, hugging her tightly, my own eyes filling. Sweetheart, I'm not making you leave. I love you so much. But sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices when things aren't fair. But this is our home now, she sobbed, and I didn't know what to say. I lay awake all night after that. Melissa had turned my love for her into a weapon. She'd made herself so comfortable that even her daughters thought of this place as theirs. And part of me hated how much I still wanted to take care of them, to tuck them in, to hear their laughter in the hallway. But I couldn't sacrifice my own life for someone else's illusion. 2 weeks later, the day came. She didn't speak to me as she carried boxes out to the car. Her jaw was tight, her eyes red but defiant. The girls waved through the window and I waved back, holding myself together with every shred of strength I had. Melissa lingered in the doorway for a moment, keys in her hand. You'll regret this, she said. But I didn't answer. I just closed the door behind her, and when the lock clicked shut, I sank to the floor, finally letting myself cry. The house was silent after they left, so quiet it felt unnatural, like the walls were holding their breath. I sat there on the floor for what felt like hours, knees pulled to my chest, trying to remember what it had been like before all of it. Before her suitcase, before the soft invasion, before the war waged in half smiles and redecoration. But the house didn't remember. The silence wasn't the same. It had changed, and I had too. The first morning alone, I walked into the kitchen and was startled by how much space there was. The counter was clear, the fridge was mine again, and the scent of pancakes had been replaced by nothing at all. I stood there with a mug of coffee and stared at the bare space where Melissa had once kept her motivational magnets. I should have felt free. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt like a thief in my own home. It took weeks before I stopped, waiting for her footsteps in the hallway or the soft giggle of her daughters down the corridor. I kept the guest room door shut, not because I was saving it, but because I couldn't bear to see the empty bookshelf or the pale yellow walls. It felt like a grave. My friends tried to help. They came over, brought wine, tried to fill the silence with laughter and stories. They told me I'd done the right thing, that it was my house, that boundaries are love too. But I could see in their eyes the unspoken question, how did it get that far? And I asked myself that question every day. I went to therapy, hoping to untangle the guilt from the truth. My therapist said I had been taught early on to sacrifice for peace. That loving Melissa didn't mean letting her take everything. That sometimes, protecting yourself is the most generous thing you can do for everyone else. I nodded. I understood. But that didn't make it easier. I got a letter from Melissa a few months later. It was short. Just a single page, handwritten, in the careful script she used when she wanted to be taken seriously. Addie, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. I've had time to think, and I can see now how far I crossed the line. I let my fear of being alone blind me to what I was doing to you. I confused safety with possession. I'm sorry. I found a small apartment in Rivergate. It's nothing like your place, but it's mine. The girls are adjusting. I won't ask for anything more from you. I just hope one day you'll forgive me. Love, Melissa, I read it 3 times. The first time in anger, the second in sorrow, and the third with something close to relief. I didn't write back. Not right away. But I didn't throw it away either. I folded it carefully and put it in the same binder where I'd stored all the evidence. A different kind of record. A softer kind. One I hoped I could look at someday without the ache. Seasons passed. I repainted the guest room, not because I wanted to erase them, but because I needed to reclaim it. I chose a deep ocean blue and filled the walls with art I loved. I started planting flowers in the garden again, alone this time, but with purpose. Every weekend, I found a new corner of the house to restore, a ritual of rebuilding, not just of space, but of self. One night, I walked into the living room and caught myself smiling for no reason. No guests, no drama, just the soft hum of the evening and the way the lamplight painted golden shapes on the floor. I sat down on the couch, tucked my feet under me, and finally felt like I had come home. Not just to my house, to myself. And I knew then that I hadn't lost my sister. Not really. I had lost a version of us that needed to break. But maybe someday when the wounds weren't so fresh, we'd find our way back to each other. Not as housemates, not as enemies, but as women who learned the hard way that love must live beside respect, and that no home can survive when built on silence and sacrifice. Until then, I would keep the door locked, the boundary firm, and my heart open, just enough.